The world that we live in today is complete bullshit, and we know it. I say live the life you wanna live, cause we only got one of these bitches.
They got folks going to college to work at a desk, but don't need a degree to come run the U.S. Hey, this world that we live in, this shit here a mess. How we living in hell, but I feel like I'm blessed. Get a whole lot of dirt for this shit on my chest. It's a whole lot of work I put in for my city. You can look and just tell that I'm not like the rest. When I give you this shit, I'ma give you my best.
He'd actually... On the morning of August 26, 2015, WDBJ reporter 24-year-old Allison Parker and her cameraman 27-year-old Adam Ward visited the Bridgewater Plaza near Smith Mountain Lake in Virginia. Their goal was to do a live interview with the executive director of the local Chamber of Commerce, Vicki Gardner, about an upcoming event at the lake. Things went just as planned initially, with Adam setting up the camera equipment and Allison starting the interview at 6:45 a.m. What none of them knew, however, was that they were about to become the victims of a crazed stalker. Just seconds into the interview, an armed man walked up to the group and opened fire. The live feed cut back to the in-studio reporter, who was just as shocked at what happened as the many viewers watching live.
Okay, not sure what happened there. We will, of course, let you know as soon as we find out what those sounds were from.
Tragically, by the time first responders arrived, both Allison and Adam had already succumbed to their injuries and passed away. Vicki was badly hurt as well, but she managed to play dead and ultimately survive the encounter despite getting shot in the back. As for the perpetrator, he had already fled the scene by this point. And with no nearby CCTV capturing a clear image of his face or vehicle, investigators were left at a dead end. But then, someone at the WDBJ network analyzed the footage further, which revealed one blurry but still recognizable frame of the person responsible for this tragedy. This was 41-year-old Vester Lee Flanagan, a former WDBJ reporter who went by the professional name of Bryce Williams. He'd actually worked with both Allison and Adam in the past, but was fired from his job after higher-ups received several reports of workplace aggression. However, what seemed like a disgruntled ex-employee lashing out at his former colleagues at first turned out to have a far darker backstory to it. You see, Vester had an extensive history of being difficult to work with, long before he joined WDBJ. He was fired from one of his early reporting jobs from NBC affiliate WTWC in the year 2000 for, quote, odd behavior towards his coworkers. While the exact reason for his termination was never revealed to the public, from what I was able to find, it had something to do with him being aggressive and trying to intimidate others. But instead of admitting fault, he filed a racial discrimination lawsuit against his employer, which eventually ended with an out-of-court settlement. However, that was only the beginning. From there, he found work at multiple other stations, but struggled to build a career at one place, largely due to the many altercations he got into with his colleagues. He had severe anger management issues and would often resort to physically confronting his coworkers over even the smallest disagreements.
He had increasing conflicts with people at the station, especially the floor crew, some of the other reporters, some of the photographers in the field, to the point where he was threatening people, had some physical confrontations with a couple of people, and at one point became such a distraction that we finally had to terminate him.
He eventually secured a position at WDBJ in March of 2012, and it was the same story once again. It didn't take long for him to fall into the same pattern of anger and bullying there as well. Just months into his employment, the WDBJ management had already received multiple reports of his coworkers feeling threatened or uncomfortable working with him. In fact, his behavior at WDBJ was worse than at any of his previous jobs, leading to his termination in January 2013, less than a year after he started. He even had to be escorted out by police when he refused to accept his termination and threatened his superiors with violence. Vester once again tried to play the racial discrimination card and singled out Allison and Adam for the alleged racist behavior. However, a third-party investigation didn't find any evidence of discrimination, and his case was thrown out. He likely named them because he knew they were among the coworkers who had filed complaints against him. After his shameful termination from WDBJ, he struggled to find work elsewhere in the industry, and his resentment against the two colleagues he believed had destroyed his life only grew with each setback. This resentment reached its tipping point on the morning of August 26, 2015. He tracked down where Allison and Adam were doing their next job and stalked them as they were getting ready to go live. As soon as they began the interview, Vester walked up to them and opened fire. But this was only part one of his plan. You see, while Adam's camera did catch Vester for a split second, the footage wasn't clear enough for the investigators to name him as the prime suspect with complete certainty. Fortunately, this doubt vanished quickly when, at 8:26 a.m., Vester faxed a 23-page manifesto to ABC News, admitting to everything. Though most of these pages were filled with nothing more than the incoherent ramblings of an extremely angry and mentally unwell man. In them, he described himself as a human powder keg just waiting to go boom, how he was angry at the world, and mentioned the Charleston church incident as his tipping point. How that connected to him taking the lives of his former coworkers was never entirely clear. Then, at 11:14 a.m., he also uploaded a video of the crime he'd recorded from his point of view on Facebook. This left no doubt that Vester was the one behind the incident, prompting an immediate nationwide manhunt. Tracing his cell phone allowed the officers to find him on the highway, attempting to flee the state in a rented vehicle at 11:20 a.m. But when they tried to pull him over, he sped up and eventually crashed onto the side of the road. And before the officers could reach his car, he decided to end the chase with the firearm he had on him, bringing the manhunt to a sudden, shocking conclusion. On the 25th of June 2014, Charles Bothell went on the Nancy Grace Show seeking the public's help in finding his missing son. 12-year-old Charlie was first reported missing from his home in Detroit, Michigan 11 days ago on June 14th. His father, Charles, had been doing everything in his power to help locate his son, from going door to door in his neighborhood to spreading missing person posters throughout the city. Unfortunately, despite dozens of people, including the FBI, looking for him, the young boy was nowhere to be found. And the hope of finding him alive was diminishing with each passing day. Appearing on live TV was Charles' last-ditch effort to raise awareness about his son's disappearance, hoping someone with information might see the show. However, just minutes into the broadcast, the interview took a bizarre turn when Nancy received a report that no one expected.
The father of the missing 12-year-old boy, Charlie, with me is his father, Charlie Bothell. Charlie, we're getting reports that your son has been found in your basement. Sir?
Apparently, while Charles was on TV, investigators obtained a search warrant to conduct a thorough search of his home. There, they found Charlie huddled in the basement behind a massive pile of barrels and boxes. Upon hearing the news of his son's discovery, Charles reacted with complete shock.
How could your son be alive in your basement?
I have no idea.
However, something about his reaction felt extremely off. Many argued that a normal father would have ended the interview immediately and rushed to the son he hadn't seen in 11 days. Charles, on the other hand, seemed more concerned with denying the report and trying to prove his innocence.
Sir, did you check your basement?
I checked my basement, the FBI checked my basement, the Detroit police checked my basement, my wife checked my basement. I've been down there several times. We've all been checking.
He even lashed out at other reports for insinuating that he knowingly forced his son to hide in the basement, when in reality, his actions were far more cruel than anyone could have expected. The truth came to light as soon as the investigators found Charlie. According to him, his stepmother, Monique Dillard Bothell, was the one who ordered him to hide in the basement. She also told him not to make any sound, no matter what he heard. From there, they spread the rumor that their son had gone missing and began looking for him. But despite their cries for help, they were very uncooperative with the police to ensure that Charlie wouldn't be found. Investigators only sought the search warrant because they suspected Charlie was already dead. As for why the couple would do this, that remains a mystery to this day. Both have continued to claim they knew nothing about Charlie's whereabouts. Though, given what we know, the most likely explanation is that they wanted to exert even more control over his life. You see, when the investigators located Charlie, he had severe cuts and bruises on his body, likely from his parents. In addition to that, growing up, he also had to endure a grueling daily exercise routine that included 100 push-ups, 200 sit-ups, and 100 jumping jacks twice a day. Charlie was already homeschooled and cut off from the rest of society. Maybe the couple thought that faking his disappearance would allow them to do whatever they wanted without any oversight. Regardless of their intentions, their crime was clear as day. The two were arrested shortly after and stood trial over the upcoming months, with Charlie himself coming forward to testify against them. And while they were able to avoid jail time due to a plea deal, they lost complete custody of Charlie, who now lives safely with other relatives. On the evening of November 19, 2014, the Rockville, Maryland Fire Department responded to an intense house fire. The fire had engulfed the entire double-story house and was getting more and more intense with each passing minute. It took them over an hour to get the fire under control, and the house was barely standing by that point. Now, fires like these can start for any number of reasons, from a stove left on to an electrical short. However, before the investigators could even think about determining the cause, 27-year-old Carlos Peralta, who was one of the residents of the house, walked up to an ABC7 reporter covering the incident live and made the wildest revelation. According to him, this fire was the result of arson. Not only that, but he was the one who started the fire just hours earlier.
Me, I set it on fire.
Given the sheer strangeness of this unsolicited confession, the reporter didn't believe him at first. But Carlos was more than happy to provide more details of how he committed the crime.
I just poured gas, set it on fire and went to buy a drink and came back.
Minutes later, he walked up to the police officers standing nearby and confessed to them as well. His clothes had the smell of gasoline, and a basic search revealed a lighter in his pocket, providing the officers enough evidence to believe his story and arrest him on the spot. As for his motive, Carlos claimed that he did all this to get the media's attention about the deplorable living conditions in that house. However, burning down the house he wanted to report on made little sense. That is, until investigators dug further into his history and discovered that he'd been suffering from schizophrenia as well as alcoholism for the past few years. He was also arrested for destruction of property just 2 weeks before this incident. Put simply, this house fire was the doing of a mentally troubled man who genuinely believed he was doing the right thing. The fire ended up causing $400,000 in property damage. Fortunately, the other 5 residents, including Carlos's own mother, were able to escape without any harm. Though what happened to Carlos after his arrest was never made public. But given the severity of his crime, he was likely sentenced to several years in prison. On July 27, 2007, news helicopters in Phoenix, Arizona were reporting on a live police chase that was happening in the city. The chase had begun about 22 minutes earlier when the police identified and pulled over a stolen flatbed pickup truck. In an attempt to avoid arrest, the driver, 23-year-old Christopher J. Jones, reversed into the police cruiser and tried to flee the scene. Unfortunately for him, word of the chase got out quickly, and minutes later, 6 different helicopters were tracking his every move. This included 1 police chopper and 5 others from different news stations. However, while everyone's eyes were fixated on the road, a tragedy was about to take place in the sky. It's in the sky.
We'll see what happens. Can't go much further.
Stop. This may be the end of this thing.
Well, he's taking off, running.
Okay, now it's a foot chase.
Okay, now he's jumped into another vehicle.
Okay.
All right, they're closing in. Looks like they've...
Oh, jeez.
We're going to pull out. We don't know what has just happened right there. It looks like the police have closed in on him. We don't know what exactly has transpired between the police.
Seemingly out of nowhere, 2 of the news helicopters' feeds abruptly stopped. They had crashed into each other before tumbling to the ground and exploding on impact. One of the helicopters involved in this crash belonged to an ABC affiliate network, KNXV, piloted by Craig Smith with camera operator Rick Krolak. The other was reporting back to an independent Phoenix station named KTVK with pilot Scott Bowerbank and photographer Jim Cox. All 4 were sadly killed instantly on impact, leaving the other reporters stunned and struggling to process the sudden tragedy.
Oh, Jesus. Oh, my gosh. Oh. Phoenix Tower, Skyblock 10. Just had a mid-air collision over here at the park. 2 helicopters. 2 helicopters down. Oh, my God.
Fortunately, the helicopter's crash landed in an empty park, avoiding any additional casualties. A later investigation by the National Transportation Safety Board concluded that the accident was the result of both pilots' failure to see and avoid the other helicopter. But that still raises the question of how. How could 2 experienced pilots make such a critical error? Well, the answer to that lies in how many news helicopters operated during that time. But first, an important thing to note is that when so many choppers are in close proximity, traditional air traffic control systems are not very useful. Instead, the pilots are instructed to operate under visual flight rules. In other words, they were responsible for keeping an eye on their surroundings and maintaining safe distance at all times. Now, this shouldn't have been an issue for experienced helicopter pilots like Craig and Scott. The issue, however, was that the 2 were doing a lot more than just flying the choppers. Not only did they have to monitor multiple communication channels with other helicopters, air traffic control, and the network, they were also reporting live on the action below as it unfolded before them. While juggling all these responsibilities, one of the pilots briefly lost awareness of their surroundings for just a few seconds. Tragically, that was long enough for the helicopters to drift too close and collide mid-air. The only silver lining was that the incident led to major reforms in news helicopter safety, including news stations using a shared single helicopter feed and studio ground-based reporting, measures that continue to save lives to this day.
It's your boy BeanThatDude. Peace out.
I got you. What did I just tell you?